Hello, this is Amos Pruden. I'd like to welcome you back into the kitchen to introduce you to my favorite tofu recipe. That's right, the T word. It is a 4-letter word in many communities, but I'd like to help break down those barriers and help you win over even the most staunch meat eaters. It's a dish called Kentucky Fried Tofu, but the beauty of it is it's not even fried, no oil, and certainly no chicken involved. So I'll show you what we have here today for the breading. We're going to use nutritional yeast, and I like to also spice it up with some curry powder. So I've got 3 parts nutritional yeast to 1 part curry powder. This is actually something that you don't really need to spice up. It works just great with the straight nutritional yeast as well. So I'm just going to set up the ribbon station here. We're also going to be using soy sauce. We're going to be dipping our slices of tofu into the soy sauce. Not marinating, just dipping them in. And then dredging them like you would for making fish and chips into the seasoned nutritional yeast. For this dish, we're going to be using a wet hand, dry hand technique, which is the same technique that you would use for any number of other dishes like fish and chips or chicken parmesan or eggplant parmesan. And I'm going to show you how that works. So again, I've got my pan with parchment paper ready for the tofu here. And I've also got my oven on at 375. And when you take the tofu out of the package, you're just going to need to slice it into equal size pieces. And with a name like nutritional yeast, you know it has to be good for you. It's actually got a good source of B12 vitamins, especially for non-meat eating people. So you're going to reserve your left hand, in my case, for the wet hand, and the right hand will work as my dry hand. And I want to be careful not to go back and forth. That is, put my wet hand into the dry breading, and likewise, not to put my right hand, my dry hand, into the wet soy sauce. So it does take some practice to do it properly and not get a big sticky mess going all over your hands. So just make sure that the tofu is well coated with our nutritional yeast here. And nutritional yeast is available oftentimes in the bulk section of your favorite health food store. And I'm just going to line them up on the sheet pan here with the parchment paper with just a little bit of space in between to ensure even cooking. Other spice mixes work well in the breading for this dishes, such as Moroccan spice or Southwest seasoning, so definitely feel free to experiment with your own spice mixes here. But just know that it's better to have a salt-free seasoning mix since we are getting plenty of sodium with our soy sauce here. And for 3 pounds of tofu, I find that a cup of nutritional yeast breading is usually enough to get all of our tofu slices well coated. But just realize that you may need to add a little more if you should run out of breading. And tofu is also an excellent source of calcium, especially if you're a vegan, not getting it through dairy products. Okay, so we have our tray full of tofu now, and our oven is preheated at 375. Pop it right into the oven here. In about 30 minutes, I'm going to return and rotate the tray 180 degrees. After another 30 minutes in this oven here, I'm going to remove the tofu and I'll show you what happens next. Okay, so our Kentucky Fried Tofu has been in the oven at 375 for about an hour now. So I'm going to go ahead and check it to see if it's ready to flip. Because what we're going to do is flip the tofu over if the nutritional yeast is sticking, clinging to the tofu. You can see there that it is indeed making a nice crust on that piece right there. So we're just going to go around, gently flip each individual piece. If you see that the nutritional yeast is sticking to the parchment paper, then you know that it needs more time in the oven. And once it goes back into the oven, it's going to need about another 40 minutes. And this baking and dehydration that's going on will help to give the tofu a really nice texture, make it a little more chewy, more like chicken really. Love the parchment paper for this too, because it doesn't stick or need any oil. Okay, so now that all our pieces have been flipped, I'm going to pop it back in the oven at 375 for another 40 minutes. Okay, so after 40 more minutes in the oven, after being turned over, you find that the tofu is indeed done cooking. It has a nice sort of crust on the outside. And it's delicious served warm right away, but it's also quite nice left over too. The protein has time to sort of firm up and be even a little more chewy and meat-like. And that's how I do Kentucky Fried Tofu with a curry spice. Enjoy.